Okay, let's save the world. So some of these recommendations will be more targeted at the individual, while others will be at the level of institutions. We will start with the institutions. So the first one is that we should invest more in sleep science. Sleep is a huge issue. Let me start with the economical argument. The economic argument is that if you have your workers sleeping better, they will work more, be more productive, more money. But the real argument is that we know that sleep is a huge agent in assuring that someone is healthy. And it is a huge issue. A lot of people suffer from insomnia. And currently, the pharmacological treatment of insomnia consists of using drugs that promote sedation and not necessarily sleep. Additionally, most of them aren't that physiologically safe. We have Z drugs, we have benzodiazepines, we have tricyclic antidepressants, low dose of antipsychotics. All of these don't really fix the issue. I'm not saying that the final answer to guarantee perfect sleep every night needs to be a pharmacological modality, but we need something that can truly make us sleep better. The world will be a much better place and probably a more peaceful one. Next, we should strive to get as close as possible to a meritocracy where the most qualified person gets the job. This is crucial, especially in jobs that have a significant impact on society. The last institutional advice is that we should provide an educational framework that promotes an interdisciplinary approach where students are in contact with various fields of knowledge, therefore allowing people to become a little bit of a polymath. This is important because, as we know now, fields of knowledge, although they are highly specialized, there's just so much information that you can't be a polymath these days, right? Because the degree of knowledge that you must know for your own field is just there's not enough hours in the day, there's not enough compute in your brain to actually do that. But trying to promote an interdisciplinary approach is crucial because it allows you to form more connections. And in this day and age, many of the fields, for instance, in science are taking a systems approach, and taking a systems approach requires you to make connections between various fields and try to understand how the answer to the question you are studying needs to be viewed from different perspectives and viewpoints. Okay, now going to the individual. Realizing that most people are worthy of forgiveness is crucial, and allowing people to redeem themselves is one of the hallmarks of an adaptive society. For those people for whom forgiveness is not on the table, cut them off from your life and move on. Now, if you do a lot of physically intense stuff, try to do more intellectually intense and challenging stuff. I'm saying this because nowadays there's this tendency for influencers to just promote the idea of doing physically challenging things, but when it comes to doing more intellectually hard things like learning programming, learning a new language, learning math, or some other thing that really makes your brain sort of explode.
Brain explosion any second.
The notion of adversity is now often framed in terms of doing physically challenging things. And because of this, we need to pay some attention in order to become more well-versed individuals and more apt to deal with various situations. I think that if we realize that we are doing too much of a physically challenging things and we frame the concept of adversity just on that, we need to do more of the opposite, because life is a combination of having intellectual challenges and also physical challenges. So if you're doing a lot of physical stuff, try to do more intellectual stuff. And if you're doing more intellectual stuff, try to do more physically challenging things. In that same line of logic, we live in a digital world that is often too hyper-stimulating. We have all of these reels, these shorts, and this is completely mismatched with our biological dimension. And because of that, we need to spend more time outdoors in contact with nature. We know that being in nature is highly beneficial for our psychological and physical health. And so living in concrete jungles like most of us live in urban settings just detaches us from our sensory experience. And so we need to find time in our day to spend time outdoors in green spaces. If you live in a big city and you have no close access to a forest or something along those lines, just try to go to your local park, spend some time out there, and this will be highly beneficial for your mental health. I also believe that everyone should try out sports, movement practices, and perhaps maybe more martial arts. You do not need to choose Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu like I did.
That's okay.
You can just choose any other martial art. The goal here is that practicing a martial art just peels that abstract layer that is constructed by our daily rumination. It allows you to connect more deeply with yourself and other people. And it also promotes physical contact, which is something that is becoming more scarce today as we live more isolated. Many of us are working from home, spending hours just alone, isolated. And so martial arts has this capacity to just make us so focused on what we are doing, where the layer of thought and abstraction that constructs much of our day just goes away. Because you have no other choice. If you are to be engaged in the martial art, there is no other option than just to be present in the moment. The next one, my next suggestion, is to study philosophy. Philosophy is uncomfortable. It has no obligation to make you feel good after you study it. But I believe it is essential for all of us to study philosophy. You can choose, philosophy is a very rich field, so you can choose whatever area you prefer. But I believe that philosophy has the capacity to humble us. It makes us realize how little we know, how much of what we think to be true or that we formulate to be true is actually flawed to a great extent. And in a world that is filled with a lot of trolls, fake news, misleading headlines, and echo chambers, philosophy may be, to some extent, the antidote for this. When it comes to science, philosophy is also crucial. There are a lot of scientists who look at philosophy, looking at it as if it is useful, having no purpose. But what they forget is that science was born from philosophy, and that science needs philosophy to some extent to keep it in check. But philosophy also needs science. So once again, this goes back to what I mentioned earlier, that we need to integrate all of these disciplines together because they enrich one another. Following this, we need to get rid of the self-made delusion. What I mean by this, and you don't need to go hard determinist on this proposition, but the idea is that many of the things that predict our success and actually contribute to our success and failures are actually completely out of our control. Take, for example, your brain, right? Your brain is a major determinant of the person you are and your capabilities. What mainly determines your brain is the genes you inherit, right, from your parents. You didn't pick your parents. You just were born to them. Additionally, we know that the environment has a major influence on how the brain develops, particularly on the prefrontal cortex, which is the latest brain region to mature, and it is highly sensitive to environmental factors. But even then, your environment is also mainly out of your control because the environment you were born with depends on your parents, right, and the geography that is involved in that. And so when we take this into consideration, we just realize that when we have our successes and our failures, and when we look at other people and we judge them, we need to realize that a lot of what happens is completely out of our control. And so this idea of the self-made delusion, where some people claim that their achievements are a product of simply their, ingenuity, their bravery, their brilliance, their genius, all of this is not actually true. Realizing that there's a lot of this that is out of our hands, and when we judge someone as being a failure, maybe they didn't achieve as much as you did because they didn't live in such a facilitating environment. Realizing this is the road to compassion, and I believe that compassion is crucial in any society. The next one is to understand your dogmas. Everyone has them. So there are things in our psyche, in our belief system, that regardless of the evidence that we will receive, no matter how precise and eloquent that evidence is, we will still not change our minds. And this is okay. This is a product of how our brains try to create a coherent framework of the world and try to create psychological comfort and safety. And because of that, some things will just not be on the table to change. But it is important to understand our dogmas because that allows us to understand our blind spots, and it allows us to make conversation much better. And it allows us to be more open-minded sometimes. Everyone likes to consider themselves as being open-minded, and open-mindedness, of course, lives on a spectrum. But if we understand our dogmas better, we will probably be able to have better conversations, and we will also be better able to understand the other person's side and don't be so desperate to win arguments. To be more precise about this, just consider your perceptual apparatus, right? You perceive the world in 3 dimensions, you see certain colors, you experience the flow of time linearly as moving forward. All of those perceptions frame, of course, your reasoning. So, that old debate of empiricism versus rationalism. Of course, the way you think is greatly based on your perceptions, on your views of the world. And so that creates some axioms or some assumptions or beliefs that you will simply hold on to. That's just basically what this means. And being aware of what beliefs are constructed from that is an important task. The next one is realizing that most of us live in some sort of clan. And let's make this specific to politics. Spartan! Left and right wing. So people on the left accuse people on the right of doing something, people on the right accuse the people on the left of doing something, but at the end of the day, each side must just realize that the accusations that one side is doing is also being committed by that same side, and that when we are having a conversation with people that have a different belief system than us, and people who belong to the other clan, it is especially important to understand that we must debate the other person's argument and not their label or not their clan, because a lot of times in political conversations, people are not debating ideas. They're just debating the ideology. They're debating the fact that this was said by someone that is right-wing, or the fact that this was said by someone who is left-wing. And that simply just destroys any type of conversation, because how are you able to actually engage with another person's ideas if you are just stuck on that so superficial layer of clans? If you are reading something that is supposed to be completely informative and factual, and that thing is using a lot of emotional triggering words, and it is triggering you emotionally, stop, take a deep breath, and question why that's the case. The next one is that I believe that everyone should contemplate the reality of death. Knowing that we will die and meditating on it helps us set our priorities straight, and understanding that we won't be here forever, that one day we will be nothingness. Of course, you can assume other metaphysical frameworks and of an afterlife and such, but I truly believe that we should take seriously this prospect that, this is it. This is the last life we will have. Doing this will make every hug that we give our loved ones count more, because we will realize that every hug we give is one less hug in the sum total count of hugs we can give. Knowing that we will die and contemplating our fragility and vulnerability will also make us, in my opinion, more compassionate and able to connect with other people at a deeper level. And at the end of the day, what human beings strive for is for a sense of connection with one another or with something that is greater than them. So contemplating on that mortality is also one way to get to that position. The next one is to practice on identification, which is essentially the idea of not defining the totality of your being with your thoughts, emotions, and ideas. Doing so will, once again, make you more able to achieve peace, less identified with your opinions and ideas, which will allow you to be more open-minded and better able to communicate with other people. And overall, it will just make you a more functional human being. In terms of skills that we need to learn, I believe that much more now than learning how to program or history, and I'm not saying that those ones aren't important, they absolutely are, but for me, the most crucial skill that everyone should learn is data literacy and basic statistical science, because this is a data world and you are smack in the middle of it. And learning statistical science, understanding how data is produced, how statistical inference is done, understanding how data visualization can be made to manipulate us, understanding all of that is one way to make sure that you are not left behind and manipulated and played with. The next one is to avoid lying. Of course, some lies are okay, they're inconsequential. For example, someone asks you a question and you know that the truth will upset them, but you know that the question isn't a big deal, so the truth doesn't matter that much in this situation in relation to how you will make the other person feel. In those situations, it is a matter of judgment, and if you make that calculus and you realize that, then it might be okay. But generally speaking, we should avoid lying at all costs, because when we lie, we are not only lying to other people, we are lying to ourselves, we are creating a reality that is different than the one we face, and that makes us weaker and less able to actually face the reality that is in front of us. So this is why we should avoid lying at all costs and just trying to say the truth and standing by it. The next one is that if you have the capabilities, the structure to be able to follow your dreams, then you are morally obligated to do so. Because for a lot of people, pursuing their dreams is completely impossible. They neither have the structure, they don't have the financial means, the circumstances of life simply does not allow them to follow those dreams. And this means that you are effectively living the dream life of someone. And I believe that carries some responsibility, because someone in this world would give everything to be in the same position that you are now. And so if you are in a position where you can pursue your dreams, be proactive about it and give it your all. When it comes to our understanding of what makes health, a big one is to realize that food is medicine. And just because it doesn't come in a pill form, it doesn't mean that it doesn't have the same impact on your health. Because of this, we need to understand that everything that we eat is having a consequence in our health, just not just physical health, but mental health, because they're both integrated. And so understanding that we can greatly improve our health or diminish it by what we eat is one next step to promoting better health. The next one is to understand that effort is non-negotiable. You might be not talented enough, you might not be skilled enough, but if there is something that truly means something to you, you must give your best to achieve it. The last one is to avoid victimization. You are luckier than many and unluckier than others. And if you are unluckier than most, my heart goes out to you. And in those situations, perseverance, resilience, and acceptance must really be built. But for most people, and I truly mean most people, victimization should truly not even be on the table. It should not be an option. Because once again, victimization just makes you less resilient, and most of the times it has actually absolutely no correspondence with the truth of the situation. So in these situations, just try to understand what you can control, and understand as well that life has no obligation to be fair to you. It has no obligation to, be a certain way. And accepting that is one of the ways to avoid a victim mentality. So hopefully you found this video interesting. This is of course not going to fix the world. It also depends on your perception on how broken the world is. But these were just some suggestions or principles that I believe that if we are able to do, it will definitely make the world we live in far better. So let me know if you agree with these topics that I mentioned, or if there is something that I missed out that is hugely important. And just please leave in the comments your feedback, and I will be sure to read them and take them in mind.